All right. Happy Friday, everybody. Hope you guys are doing well, getting set up for the weekend. This is the Running Form Foundations workshop. We're going to chat about how to prevent injuries and get faster. So to make sure you're in the right place, this is perfect for anybody that's in running, any runner out there, any level, new runner, seasoned runner, professional runner, anything. So if that's you, you're in the right place. I wrote a couple things down here, kind of phrases that a lot of people will talk about when talking about form, right? They're worried that their running form is going to get them hurt, worried that the form looks bad. We always ask how our form is, how we're looking, and we think that we're going to be so much better if we looked a certain way, right? This mirror is here to remind me of a bad dad joke. So I'm a dad now, so I can tell all the bad jokes that I want. But I have a joke with runners is there's two types of runners in the world. Those that look at themselves in the mirror when they run by, and liars. So all of us look at the mirror, right? We look at the storefront windows, we look at the cars running by to see how we look. We're, in general, we're fairly self-conscious about the way that we run, and that's okay for right now, right? So it's okay to look in the mirror and to analyze how you're running. I'm going to try to change your perception on that a little bit going forward so that you don't talk as negative to yourself. And see if there's something that you can do to continue to refine that movement and change potentially some deficits, the things that you have. So let's get into who am I. So for those of you that don't know, I think I know most people in the call here, but anybody on the replay, anybody today that doesn't know who I am, I'm Dr. Spencer Agnew. I'm a physical therapist and running coach. I'm located in Madison, Wisconsin. I'm also a husband and a father. These are my boys. I'm a runner as well. So I ran collegiately at Marquette University. I ran post-collegiately. Continue to run with the Wisconsin Runner Racing Team. I have a physical therapy practice here in Madison, Peak Endurance Performance and Physical Therapy, and I have a coaching program, coaching team that I coach with my partner, Thomas Reitbach, Ascend Endurance. So a little bit on me. I'm trying to give you some clarification. Like this is part of the reason that I can talk about things that I'm talking about today. But let's get into it. So over the next 45-ish minutes, these are things we're going to try to discuss, try to answer for you. Number one is I'm going to try to tell you, is your running form causing injuries, right? A lot of people are worried about that. Should I change my form to decrease my injury risk, to get better? We're going to answer some of those questions. I also want to tell you the things that contribute to your specific running form, give you three big takeaways, three cues that you can use from a running mechanic perspective to implement right away into your training. To answer the question of, should you try to run like, insert your favorite run? Do you want to run like Morgan McDonald, like Emma Colburn? Should you be trying to do that? Is that a smart thing to do? And then we're going to watch some videos. They're videos of me mainly running, just so it gives you an example of some looking for some of the things that I tend to look for when I'm working with folks. So typically, these are the things that I do, right? I talked about it a little bit during my bad joke about mirrors, but a lot of times people talk poorly about themselves, right? Talk about how they land on their heels, how they're really loud, their knees are together, they look ugly, they always look like they're dying, right? And then they talk really positively about others, right? That person looks like a gazelle, they look so smooth, so efficient, effortless, and I wish I could just strive to be like that person. So I want to start with this. This isn't the focus of the talk, but I want to kind of set the foundation that you need to work to avoid this type of self-talk, right? This type of self-judgment. You need to be fair to yourself and know that the way you run is the way you run. We can improve it, we can work on it, but comparison from you to somebody else is what's going to derail all of your success. It's what's going to put you in a pretty negative place relationship-wise with your running. So let's just start, create the foundation, create the baseline that you comparing yourself to somebody else's running form is out the books, right? You're going to compare yourself to yourself. You're going to try to improve what you can improve, control the things that you can control, okay? So if any of this sounds familiar, if you're somebody that talk to yourself like this, right? Talk about how poorly you feel as you're running, we've got to work on these things first before we even get to the point of trying to modify form and work on things that are really going to make changes mechanically down the road. So what are the reasons that people want to change their running form? And what should we worry about when changing running form? So it falls in generally two categories. You want to prevent injuries, or you're hurt and you think that you should change your form, or you want to improve your performance. You want to run a longer distance, you want to run a faster time, accomplish a certain goal. So let's dig a little bit deeper into these two different categories. I'm going to give you some overarching viewpoints on injury prevention, in quotes, and improving your performance. And then we'll dig deeper into more of the specific running mechanic things that you can do to change what I look for, what should you be changing. And then at the end of this talk, I'll give you a chance if you want to continue this conversation with me on a more individual basis. But let's lay the foundation, give you some tools, rights and values so that you can take these and apply them to your training right away. So what causes running related injuries? I will tell you, these generally fall into two categories. It's either a training error or it's a lack of your tissue capacity. So training errors can be blatant training errors, right? Somebody returns to running and they just up the volume really, really quickly, or they don't take any rest days, any recovery days. They run as fast as they can every single day. Like those are pretty glaring issues, right? And we can modify those, and those are pretty easy to manage. The change is when it's a subtle injury, modification of training, right? If you just start running a little bit too fast on some easy days and you need to pull back, those symptoms are harder to see. You feel like you're running easy, but your body's truly not recovering. At that point, your activity level, your tolerance, what you can recover from, get out of the way. This is similar to what a lack of capacity is like. So if you're, let's just use your calf muscle. Your calf muscle can tolerate this amount of force, right? This much load, this much activity, and you're doing this much. There's this deficit. There's an imbalance between what you can tolerate and what you're putting on your body. And that's where injury risk can occur. So if you look here at my fancy little scale, I like to think about training as a scale. So we've got the activity level, right? How much are you doing? How long are you going? How fast are you doing? Things like that. And the tolerance, which is basically just what can you recover from. What plays in your tolerance is a ton of things, right? Your time off, your sleep, your nutrition, your ability to manage stress, hydration, a ton of things. Activity level, it's pretty self-explanatory. It's how much you're doing, how hard it is, how many minutes that you're working. This balance should be continually going back and forth, right? We want a little bit of activity compared to what we can tolerate, and then we want to recover from it and get better. A little bit, recover from it and get better. We get hurt when that balance is out of it, right? One way or the other. So if we're doing too much activity, not enough recovery, that puts us at risk for injury. If we're doing a lot of recovery and not enough activity, and then all of a sudden it's switching that pendulum, that's when we get hurt too. So getting hurt isn't always doing too much, sometimes because you were doing too little previously. So these are the main things to focus on when we're talking about running related injuries. What about performance? So number one is you just run more, right? This is me rolling my eyes like, no, if you run more, you're going to get really, really good at running more. If that's your goal performance-wise, then you've accomplished that goal. But to really improve performance, you need to be intentional and specific with what you're training for. So the next picture is one of my favorite images. If you're not a science nerd or into training, you might not like it that much, but let's show it to you anyways. So this is how you get better at running. Simple graphic, right? It's really, really, really easy. So you have your endurance training, which is like my favorite part about running. And then you have the strength training piece, which I'm trying to promote more of. And generally as runners, we really don't like strength training, but they do. And what do they play a role in? They play a role in your aerobic capacity. So endurance isn't a great word, but we'll say endurance, your sprinting ability, your coordination, things like that. And that works down to some more things that we typically talk about: VO2 max, your lactic threshold, your running efficiency, running economy, how much force and power can you generate? And that works into your performance, right? So really easy thing to worry about right here. Did I talk about running form at all? Did running form, was bad running form something that caused injuries? Was good running form something that caused increased performance? No. So at base value, your running form doesn't dictate whether you're going to get hurt or whether you're going to run fast, right? Then the big caveat comes, but we still use running form modifications to quote unquote prevent injuries and to treat some injuries. So we can use this as a way to modify forces. Force is what's used for injury, what helps performance, and what a lack of ability to tolerate force can cause injuries. So we use our running form modifications and our gait mechanics and efficiency to modify these forces. Let me just check something on the chat box. Yes, I can post, I will post this whole presentation for you guys so that you'll have the graphics. Somebody wanted that last picture that I had. So we can use running form to change our forces. We know force is what's a step above what can cause injury and what causes the ability to improve your performance. Before we get going, I'll get on the soapbox a little bit. Prevent is in quotes, right? We're going to prevent injuries. There's nothing that I can do to prevent your injuries, right? There's nothing anybody can do to prevent your injuries, right? We can reduce your risk of an injury occurring. I guess the only way to prevent an injury is to not put yourself in a situation to even get injured. So that means if you don't want to get a running related injury, then you can't run. But if you want to continue running, there's always going to be this inherent risk. What my job is, and what my job to teach you is to try to manage that risk so that you can do as many things as possible to reduce that risk and set yourself up for success. Okay, I'll talk a lot. I can talk a lot about that if you guys want to chat more about injury prevention. So let's talk about changing your gait. Why would we modify your running form and how do we do it? So this is where we're going to get into a little bit more science talk. I really like physics. I'm not going to get too deep into physics, but I'm going to show you guys some images and some things like that, try to explain it. We'll talk about the cues that you guys are going to need that you can use. You don't have to change it, but the things that you can use to try to improve your skill. Skill is going to be a big thing we're going to talk about over the next little bit. So first, what contributes to your running form? So why do you look the way that you look when you run? Number one is it's your strength, right? We all have a different amount of strength, whether it's in our hip, in our quad, hamstring, calf, eccentric strength, concentric strength, isometric loading, a bunch of big fancy terms just mean we have a certain amount of strength, and how strong I am is different than how strong somebody else is. So our strength dictates some of how we run. Our range of motion dictates that, right? Our joints can only go through certain angles if we have the ability to move them through that angle. And we have the strength to control them moving through that angle. So strength and range of motion, pretty straightforward things that are going to modify how you look when you're running. The third thing, and in my opinion, most important thing, is your skill. Running is a skill. When somebody tells me and talks to me about, oh, I run because I'm not very athletic and I'm not good at ball sports and I don't have all these skills, I've got to beat them over the head and tell them, no, running is your skill, right? You can refine your movement, you can refine your skill. That's why somebody looks like a gazelle, looks flawless or really, really good, because they refine their skill. They're working on it. You can work on it too. Doesn't mean you're going to look just like that person, because maybe your strength and your range of motion and your progression of your skill isn't to where that person is, but you can always change your skill. In science terms, for me, that's called your neuromuscular motor pattern. So it's just telling you how you move. The nice thing for all of this is you're born with a certain amount of it, but you can modify all three of these things. You can get stronger, right, through strength training. You can do some mobility work on your range of motion, work on your joint angles, and you can work on your skill. We're going to talk a little bit more about how you work on your skill, but this should give you confidence to know that if something's an issue right now in one of these three categories, we can continue to work on them. The better skill you have, the more efficient you become, generally, the better performer you're going to be. Slow down a little bit, I'm lagging there. Okay, so why would I change somebody's running mechanics? So I will change somebody's running mechanics to modify pain, thus modifying forces. So we know force is the number one thing that causes injuries. Force is the number one thing that changes performance. Force is going to cause your pain. We're going to modify that force to decrease your pain. From a therapist perspective, so this is going to be me on my soapbox again, I will not change your running mechanics if you're a pain point. People are going to ask me, why it's not as efficient. Like, I want to look a certain way, look a certain, have a certain style of running my forefoot, do all these things. The reason you're running the way you are is because of your strength, your range of motion, and your skill, right? I can modify your strength, your range of motion, and your skill. I do not want to force you to do something that you're not ready to do in either of those three categories. See people all the time. 10 years ago, this was a big thing when everybody wanted to be a forefoot runner and thought field strikers were the worst thing to come to the earth. Everybody wanted to be a forefoot straight, right? I tried it. I went to college. I'm 4 foot straight now, just because I've refined my skill. But I went to college, and college athletes, everybody 4 foot straight. So I'm going to run on my toes. And guess what happened? I had a lot of Achilles and calf issues. Why? Because my strength wasn't there. I wasn't strong enough to withstand those forces. So I was changing my form, which means I'm changing where the force is going, and I was putting it in a place that I wasn't ready to tolerate. So there was a reason that I was running the way I was, because that's what my body was efficient at tolerating. I could accept those loads. I could use that force, put it into the ground and move forward at a quick pace, right? So if you're not having pain, I don't like changing your form. So some of you, if you're not having pain, that's awesome. I'm happy. We can do other things to change your strength, your range of motion, and your skill, modify training and things like that to continue to help you improve. But changing, me being really intentional on, nope, you got to have this joint angle and move your knee here and your foot here, isn't necessarily going to be the best. We can still use the cues that I'm going to talk about to refine your skill of running, but we're not going to use the cues that we're talking about to make these huge drastic changes, get you with all these goofy joint angles, me giving you a bunch of weird cues, things like that. So that's what you're looking for. I apologize, but there's still a lot that we can do to modify. Okay, we can chat about this some more if you have other questions. The question then is, how do we modify people's form, right? So this is the other thing that's changed over the course of the last 10 years. So it's kind of wordy. I'll say it a couple times. So the thing that we're looking for is we're worried about where your foot hits the ground. We are not worried about where on your foot you're hitting the ground. Heel striking doesn't matter. If you're a heel striker, that is totally fine. That is okay. I am not worried about where on your foot you're hitting, your heel, your midfoot, your forefoot. I am more worried about where your foot is landing in comparison to your hips, right? We're trying to modify forces from your foot to your center of mass to your hips, rather than where your foot's striking on the ground. This will make a little bit more sense as we go into some of the detail, but know that if you're a heel striker, you're okay, right? It's okay. You can still do all the things that you want to do. It doesn't mean that you're going to be scarred with a bunch of injuries or cursed or anything like that. It's okay. This is a different change in thought. Some people are big into forefoot striking. What I'm going to show you now has become more and more common. This is what the latest research is showing. 5-10 years ago, it was a little different. So let's get into some science stuff. The really cool thing is that this research is from here at Madison, here at UW. So my mentor at UW-Madison Physical Therapy School, Dr. Brian Hederscheit, and his group released this, talking about how to modify forces. So what can we do to modify forces? And they use your step rate to change this. So to explain this, we got to start with a simple equation. Your speed, how fast you're running, is dictated by how long your strides are and how quickly you're turning that over, that frequency, right? So we take your stride length and your stride frequency gives us your speed. Okay, and we modify your speed by modifying one of those two variables. How long are your strides and how fast are you kind of flipping those strides off. What they use is they use modification to how quickly you're flipping that stride off, how many steps you're taking per minute. What was the big deal with this? Well, they found that they could decrease forces at your knee, at your hip joints within the leg, which helps reduce that risk for injury at that area. It decreases your center of mass, bouncing. So you've seen people, you run behind people, and they feel like they're bouncing up and down the whole time in front of you. Shortening up that stride will help narrow that bounce. It's called vertical oscillation. That's going to decrease risk for injury. You'll see later on that a lot of these things increase your performance and your efficiency. It decreases your braking impulse, which means simply it decreases how much you're slowing yourself down by, right? If you're landing way out in front, away from your body, out here, and you have a force that's working against you, slowing you down, right? So all these things were negative things that were working against people, increasing their risk for injury. Some people had injuries here, some people didn't, and it still modified all of them in both cases. The nice thing is that all they had to do was modify your turnover by 5 to 10%, which in the moment feels like a ton. If you've tried any of these changes in gait, you feel like you're short stepping, sprinting the entire time, even though you're running the same pace. So that's the caveat, is that it has to be at a consistent speed. So the only way we're going to modify this and this is if we keep one constant. So we keep your speed constant, we increase your stride frequency, we decrease your stride length, which is what I talked about earlier. I'm more worried about how front your foot is, how close your foot is to your hips. And if you shorten up your stride length, you'll land more underneath your body. So that's going to decrease the forces. That's going to make you a more efficient runner and reduce your risk for injury. This also goes against that common thought of people telling you, just open up your stride, run faster. Open up your stride, run faster. This equation is speed dependent, right? So when people try to run faster, they do increase their stride length, but they also have to increase how many steps they're taking. So don't just think that how many steps you're taking is the important part. As you run faster, you're going to take longer strides, but you're moving faster over top of the ground, so that foot's still going to land underneath you. The big thing is getting that foot to land underneath you. So I'm telling you cue number one. Talk about a little bit more, but getting that foot underneath you is the first cue that you need to focus on. So with all of this, we're basically just taking that force equation that we were talking about earlier. How much can your calf tolerate? How much are you imposing on your calf? And we're changing the force to bring it down here. So we can take you from a state of having pain, and now you're like, oh, my body can tolerate this. I can modify my pain, like I can run pain-free. Sometimes this is as quick as a 2-minute assessment on the treadmill, and you can take somebody from having pain to not having pain. It's pretty amazing. People are kind of blown away with this. The challenge comes in making this habit and working on the skill of being able to do this. Easy to do in the short term, hard to do in the long term. Okay? So let's look at some videos. All right, so this is a runner. I'm gonna let it go a little bit, see if it'll lag. I think it's lagging. Give me a thumbs up, Jared, if you can see some of that.
It's pretty it's lagging. It's hard to see smoothly.
Okay. I can see some of it and then it'll stop. So let me put it here. I'll let you catch up. The important part is this next, the still frames. I'll send you guys these links so you can watch them in real time. Basically, I wanted you to watch them in real time to see if you can see any subtle changes here. It might be hard to see at first. As you see more and more of it, you'll get a better picture of it. But the still frames are what I really want you to focus on. So if you look here at this picture, so this is my hip, right? The star is from that center of mass point. We draw a line straight down, we draw a line forward, and we figure out where I'm hitting the ground. So this is that space away from my foot. So you can see that distance, right? Does it mean much to us right now? Not really, because we don't have anything to compare it to. Right? So this was at 160 steps per minute. I bet I was running 730 pace for this. So the speed's gonna stay constant. I'm gonna change the pace and show you guys what the still frame looks like. So the next is gonna be the video. Probably not gonna work. Oh, it looks smooth on my end, but not on yours. So I'll make sure to send these over to you guys so you guys can watch those. It'll be nice for you to see what this is a 10% change, right? See what a 10% change has to the running mechanics. It's generally you can see a pretty big difference. Even if you're not don't have a trained eye, you can see a difference. So this is my initial contact at 176. So 10% increase, which is what we're trying to do. Trying to narrow your foot strike up, bring that foot closer underneath your hip. So you can see the difference here, my foot angle. If you can't see the difference, let's compare it. All right, so here's the side by side. So pretty much the same point, same leg, same foot strike. You can see the distance here and the distance here. Significantly shorter. You can see one circle. This one's gonna be like 2.5, 3 circles, okay? The angle here and here are different as well, okay? You guys able to see that? Thumbs up, good. So all we've done here is we've changed how quickly I'm stepping to decrease my stride so that we can change forces, right? So a 5% increase in step rate decreases your force at your knee in front of the shin by 20%. I'll make that trade any day of the week, okay? So what is this doing? This is making me more efficient with my running, increasing my running economy. It's also reducing my risk of injury because it's changing some of the forces. But again, we talked about it initially, strength, range of motion, and skill. If I don't have the prerequisite strength, range of motion, and skill to accept this change, it's not gonna matter, okay? So this is not a end all be all. This is a tool that we use in conjunction with other aspects of your training. Let me check the question here. Yes, so pace stays the same. So that's the caveat. That's where people get in trouble. Pace stays the same. Both of these videos were at the exact same pace. Because if I change pace, then the equation totally changes. So that's the hard part, especially now that it's springtime, summer's coming, there's gonna be nice warm weather out there. The best place to do this is on treadmill. Because the treadmill is going to maintain a constant speed. When you go outside, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna hit my 10% increase, and you're gonna keep going at 10% increase, you're just gonna run faster. Right? So until you refine the skill of doing this, it's really hard to do unless you have the constant speed of the treadmill, okay? Another thing which you guys will notice, these numbers here, they don't look like 180, which is weird. Like we always talk about 180 steps per minute. I'm supposed to run 180, right? So the 180 steps per minute, you can talk to Dr. Brian Hedershed all you want. He'll tell you that was a misconception. People took his data, took the 180 that came out in their study and applied it to everything. The question was, is this at a constant speed? And the answer is yes, right? So that 180 in his study was at a self-selected speed, constant speed for those individuals. If you increase your speed, these numbers change. So running 180 at 10-minute pace, 8-minute pace, 6-minute pace looks totally different. So going for 180 steps per minute is misinformation, okay? So it's not gonna work. You've gotta find a cadence at a specific speed and then modify that. You can't shoot for a specific cadence, if that makes sense. Any questions on that? That's a big misconception a lot of people get. You get people all the time who will just set their metronome to 180 or find music at 180 and think that I'm modifying my gait, I'm doing a really good thing. And you might be. It might just happen that that's what's going to work as a 10%, 5% increase for your cadence. But a lot of times, you need to turn the metronome off. You need to run, somebody count, somebody needs to videotape, and figure out what the right number is for you. Okay. Let's see if there's another question. How accurate are GPS? So it depends. It's a hard answer. What I do, because having your GPS watch count cadence for you is really convenient. Otherwise, you're sitting there every 10 minutes. Okay, that's a good question too. So it's hard to count cadence. It's boring. Count for a minute or whatever. It's easy just to check your watch and have that metric set. What I do is I have people test it, right? So a lot of times it's within a pretty good standard deviation, but sometimes it's completely off. So it'll depend on your GPS signal, on your route, and how many turns and things you have. What I would do is I would go out the door, I would measure it yourself, right? Say every 5 minutes you count your cadence and you get kind of an average or whatever at a constant pace, and compare that to what your watch is telling you. If it's in a, say you were running at 164, which is generally what my watch tells me, and I counted 168, I go with your watch. I think your watch is pretty good. So that means what you would do is if you were trying to make a modification, is you would make a modification internally, you would count yourself, and you would see how much modification there was in the watch, and then look for the difference. So if you tried to increase it by 10 beats per minute, let's just say you were doing like a 5%-ish change, try to do that, counting yourself, make sure that you're staying on rhythm, listen to your metronome, and then see if your watch modified as much as what you were doing internally. That makes sense. So the short answer is, yes, it can be fairly accurate, but I trial it against you counting on your own, okay? How do you determine the cadence that's best for you to hit? So what you have to do is you have to run at a specific pace. So generally what people do is I follow the research study and I say, pick a self-selected pace. So a lot of times you pick the pace. Generally it's an easy pace. I don't want you running too hard because I want this to be a training stimulus, just kind of feeling good on the treadmill. You pick your easy pace, we videotape it, we count the cadence, we look to see if there's anything that we can adjust, we can modify. Sometimes people's feet are landing really close to their hips anyways, they're right underneath their body, you don't have to change it there. Sometimes it's really far out in front, and I say let's make a 5% change. So you make a 5% change, you work on that for a couple runs for a week or so, you come back, we look at it again, and then we might bump it up to a 10% change. So we want to make small incremental changes because it's easier to adapt that than make this huge adjustment to your body. You feel foreign, you feel goofy, your skill hasn't caught up to how you're running. So again, the short answer is it's going to be tough depending on if you have a treadmill, if there is a limitation or a dysfunction with where your stride is hitting on initial contact. A lot of times you need somebody to videotape it. So if you're out on your own, it's hard to know for certain. Again, grab somebody, get on a treadmill, videotape it, look to see where you're hitting, look to see what your cadence is at, and then make 5% or 10% small changes going up. It's a hard question to ask. It's one of those things that has a lot of other variables. So I don't have a really good answer for you there. But that leads into this perfectly for what can you guys do, right? So I just kind of went through this process, but cue number one is to try to land more underneath your hips, right? The closer you can get your foot strike to underneath your body, the better. Using a treadmill, using a metronome, modifying your step rate is the easiest way to do it. It feels really foreign, it feels really goofy. I do it to myself sometimes just to make sure that I can show people on a treadmill and practice it. It's hard, so it takes some time. My favorite way to do this is to do drills, running drills, right? and to be intentional with running drills. A lot of people just blow running drills off, like, oh, my coach told me to do them. My high school athletes all the time, they just go through the motions and they worry about their workout. The drills are just as important as the workout if you put intentional focus on them, right? Because they're there to help improve your skill, to help improve your efficiencies of running. What you should be doing is taking the way you're running, moving during your drills, and applying it to your running. So doing drills, E skips, B skips, C skips, high knees, butt kicks, things like that are really important to do multiple times throughout the week to help improve your running efficiency. And also fast running. So we'll get into some of this later, but sprinting and moving fast, doing hill sprints and flat sprints, things like strides, things like that are really important to help focus on how you're running. So when I have my athletes and I'm telling them to do hill sprints or to do some fast intervals, we focus on form and not on speed. So I want you to run as fast as you can while maintaining what you visually and feel as perfect form. I don't want you to be arching back, falling forward, kind of losing your mechanics just to get a certain speed. Because if we practice running fast with kind of form all over the place, that's how you're going to perform. If we practice running fast with perfect form, as we improve our skill and we improve our form, we're going to be able to run faster while maintaining it. You'll see people at the end braces all the time that'll try to sprint and they'll be all over the place. And you'll see somebody flying by them that's able to maintain that position that they're looking for to generate more fluid force. Typically, that's the person that'll win out at the end of the race. All right. So this is going to be a hard one. I'm going to demo some of this because these videos aren't going to work. So let me make sure I catch up. Here we go. So what's cue number 2? So cue number 2 is heel recovery. So I'm going to explain these videos a little bit. You don't have to watch all of them, just parts of them. But I gave you kind of 2 ends of the spectrum. I gave you sprinters, and I gave you Jim Walmsley, who is the 100K American record holder. So somebody that sprints for 6 to 20 seconds and somebody that runs for 62 miles. You look at their mechanics and you'll see that there's a lot of similarities, right? So when we are talking about heel recovery, watching sprinters run is the perfect way to do this. You'll see this individual here, the heel is starting to come right underneath their backside. Jim is doing the same thing, bringing his heel up towards his bottom. Let me show you some of this while I'm standing here. So see if you can see me. So if you're here, right, you come up to a high knee position, you hit the ground behind you. What some people do is they do this, right? Their foot stays down, they're here. What's going to improve your form, your performance, is to get here, right? That heel recovery, you can be quick about getting that heel back to your butt and down. You're going to be able to cycle your leg quicker, which means you're going to get your foot more underneath you, and you're going to use momentum to drive your leg forward, that you can put that force back in the ground. Some people, and a lot of times this happens slower you run, which is why Jim's a good example. He's not very slow, but in comparison to the sprinter, he's running a lot slower over a longer period of time, and he is still able to maintain form, get his heel back to his butt, and cycle through. If you're hanging out down here, one thing to focus on is trying to get that heel, trying to be quick and efficient with that. So the combination of getting that foot underneath you and getting that heel to cycle through quick work hand in hand, right? We've already talked about trying to cycle your stride and to get that foot to land right underneath you. Your heel cycling is going to help with that. So what can you do to modify that? The number one thing is butt kicks. And my video here is going to be a little laggy. I'm going to pause it and I'm going to demo for you. So people do butt kicks wrong all the time. Okay, I'm back. So I'm here. A lot of times people do butt kicks. Tell me if we do this. Right. Try to get your leg back as far as possible. I'm going to challenge you to do butt kicks like this. So, are you able to see any difference? The intention of me doing butt kicks that way is to get my foot to the ground, to my butt, and back down to the ground. I'm trying to cycle as quick as possible. I'm not going through this big range of motion about swinging my leg up to my butt and kicking myself. No, I want to get your foot up and back down as quick as possible. Try to run doing what you do in a typical butt kick, getting that foot way up in the air, right? It's slow, it's awkward. If you try to focus on being quick up and down on the ground, that's going to be a lot more efficient. Okay, I'm going to pause a little bit, let the video catch up. I'm not lagging. So butt kicks are my favorite way to work on that heel recovery. A skips, B skips, other drills are good for that too, right? Anytime you're hitting the ground, getting your foot up towards your backside. And then the cueing that I use, especially when fatigued. So we've all experienced this if we've done long runs, workouts, races. We start to feel sluggish when we get tired. Our strides start to feel heavy, right? We can't get that foot off the ground. And a lot of times we're told just go to the arms and try to pump the arms to get those legs to cycle through. A lot of times I like to focus on the bottom half mechanics and focus on your legs and try to think about being quick on your feet. So instead of really pumping the arms, try to think about getting your foot on and off the ground really quickly. You might feel like you're short stepping things, but in actuality, you're going to bring that heel up towards your butt. You're going to recover that back kick more quickly to get that foot back on the ground. Don't allow you to put more force on the ground, allow you to land more underneath you. Okay? Of all three, this is generally the hardest one to work at. So, do your drills, focus on getting your feet quickly off the ground. Okay. Cue number 3. So again, I'm a science person, so here's more research. Awesome article they talked about, they tested running economy and performance. They use kind of gas exchange measures, not important stuff that way, but the outcomes they had, they found these 5 things to be the most important things for running economy and performance. Number 1 is decreasing your hip bounce. We've already talked about that with getting your foot flat underneath your hips. Number 2 is decreasing your braking forces. Guess what? We already talked about that with getting your foot land underneath your hips. Shin angle, more vertical. So if I take my phone here, and if I'm hitting the ground, and say the bottom of my phone is my heel, if I'm hitting here, further out from my body, my shin angle is there. If I'm landing underneath my body, my shin angle is vertical. So guess what? Landing underneath your body is going to address that one. And then the 4th one was a shorter stride length and greater stride frequency, which is exactly what we just talked about. So by working on landing more underneath you, you hit 4 of the 5 factors that will increase your efficiency and your performance. The last thing is an upright posture. So a lot of times when people fatigue, they either bend forward or they arch backwards. So if you can focus on running more upright, that allows you to cycle that hip a little bit more efficiently, allows you to get more knee drive, and allows you to perform at a more efficient capacity. So again, there's going to be a video on the next one. It's going to lag. I'm going to try to pause it quickly and then we can chat about it. Okay. Ooh, stop it quickly. Okay. So when do we focus on this? I tell people all the time when I'm working with them, we are always worried about maintaining an upright position. Okay. When you're running, you're trying to maintain an upright position. When you're strength training is a really, really good place to do that. In this video, I'm going to do some basically farmer carry march. So I'm going to be picking up some heavy weights and then marching. The weights are going to force me to kind of tilt side to side or make me fire in the core and maintain that upright position the whole time. When you do step ups, same sort of thing. You want to maintain an upright position, get to a high knee. Doing step downs, a lot of times people will bend forward when they're doing that step down. Trying to stay upright is really important. So whenever you're doing strength training, squats, people have a really tough time having the bar on their back and squatting straight up and down. A lot of times they'll bend forward. This is something you can use in your running and in your strength training to help increase performance, help modify forces, decrease injury. Okay. So the nice thing about that research study is that 4 of the 5 things we already talked about. Getting your foot landed underneath you is going to help improve performance. Being able to maintain an upright posture, improve performance, and being able to cycle that kick more efficiently is going to improve performance. Okay, so that's a quiz at the end. Remember those 3 things. All right, so let's bring it together. I'm going to wait a little bit. My internet really doesn't like those videos. I'll let you guys watch. So I'll post this in the group Facebook event. So if you guys want to hop in there and pick this up, you can watch the videos afterwards. So, or you can email me and I can send these to you that way too, whatever is easiest for you. We'll bring it together. So I've mentioned this multiple times. Running is a skill that you need to continue to refine, continue to work on. And your running form will change as you adapt and you kind of refine that movement, but it's intentional. You've got to put in the work. You've got to work on drills. You've got to work on strengthening, work on range of motion, get that skill and that optimization of movement down, right? So this is a personal example. This is me 4 years apart, right? So here I'm a sophomore in high school, here I'm a sophomore in college. If you can see, I'm running this, so I tried to pick ones that were at the same pace. I'm running relatively the same pace here. I'm running just a little bit faster in this one, but pretty similar. So here you can see big knee bend. You can see my foot compared to the ground, how far up it is, right? I'm gonna land out from my body on this one. I'm still running at a decent clip, so you can heel strike and still run pretty well. And then here you can see the difference. I don't have my knee bent out as far as I do on the other video. My foot is a little bit flatter. I'm gonna land underneath my body, right? So my form within 4 years looks totally different. Why? Because I put in a lot of miles, I put in time on the roads practicing. I did some strength training. I focused on drills, right? I was intentional with the training that I was doing, and I was able to make this change. Again, this is 4 years. Doesn't happen overnight. It takes a long, long time. A year before this one, I was really hurt because I had tried to change my form overnight and try to run on my toes a bunch and was just really, really silly and dumb about how I was doing things. But you can modify this as long as it's smart, slow, gradual, and intentional. Okay, we'll get back to some of this. Practicing through intentional training with things like I said, drills, and the big thing is varying the pace and the effort levels. So hills, tempo runs, fartleks, long runs, sprinting is there in bold because distance runners hate to sprint because I think the sprinters take care of that. We need to use them as examples and try to run more like them, right? If we can improve our sprinting mechanics, we're going to improve the way that we run during a 10-mile long run, or whatever we're doing that day for a workout, okay? And I've already mentioned this, your form does not mean that you're going to be more injury prone or even more successful, right? Refining your individual skill will improve your performance and decrease your risk for injury. And I say your is an important thing because we all have a different skill, a different set of attributes, different strength, range of motion, different skill that's going to work for us. So this doesn't mean that I get to go out and run like Morgan McDonald. This means I have to run like Spencer A. Okay, and you need to run like you and continue to refine and optimize your movement instead of trying to copy somebody else's. And that your form is specific to these attributes, which is gone through and hammered pretty good. So almost 45 minutes perfectly. I'm impressed, happy myself. So is your running form causing your injuries? Answer that to yourself, yes or no. Right, not causing your injuries, contributing factor based on forces. What contributes to your form? Range of motion, strength, and skill. 3 mechanic cues that you should use and you can try to implement: landing more underneath your body, not recovering that heel. So focusing on heel recovery is the fancy way to say it, but not letting that leg drag behind you, trying to get that leg heel up to your butt quickly, and then maintaining an upright position. Should you try to run like Bernard Lagat or whoever else? No, you should try to run like you. And go watch those videos because they didn't work. All right. So if you're looking for something more, I mentioned previously that if you want to continue this conversation more individually, I do have an offer for you guys, since you guys are listening to me and making it through the lagginess. So I do have a running form revitalization package. We go through your history, kind of going through your strength and your range of motion, give you some things to focus on there. The big thing is the recording and the analysis of your gait. I'll give you reported findings and figure out what the best plan is for you individually to make changes to these things if you are desiring to make changes, if you're looking for that. So giving you guys a discounted rate throughout the month of March for hanging out here and listening to me for 45 minutes. If you're interested in doing this virtually, in person, whatever's best for you. If you just have questions for me, just shoot me an email here. If you want to ask a question there instead of on the call, just shoot me an email. I'd love to send you guys some more videos. If you have videos of yourself running, I'll take a look at those for sure. So any questions for me? We got a little bit of time. Okay.
Spencer, I had just a follow-up question so everyone's clear. How are you going to send out this, the PowerPoint? So not necessarily the recording, but the actual file?
So easiest place is probably going to be the Facebook event. And I would just drop something in there. Since I don't have emails. For
those that aren't on Facebook, what would be the best way?
For those that aren't on Facebook, shooting me an email would probably be the best way. Yeah. So if you're on Facebook, it'll just be in the event. I don't have all your guys' emails and contact info. So if you want to drop a link to that or send me an email, I can shoot over the PowerPoint for you. Okay. So again, if you want to ask questions, shoot me an email. Otherwise, thanks for hanging out. Hope you guys have a good rest of your Friday. Hope you can take some of the stuff, add it into your weekend workouts. Looks like things are gonna be pretty nice here in Wisconsin, at least for the foreseeable future. This next week or so is gonna be pretty awesome.
Thanks, Spencer, for going over all that with us.
No problem. No problem.
And if anyone has any other topics related to form or other ideas, Spencer and I are always kind of brainstorming what the community is looking for. This was kind of one of those first topics that always comes up in conversation in the running circles at the shop and at Peak. So shoot either of us a message or an email, and let us know what you want to see so that we can make sure we're covering what y'all want to hear about.
Yeah, and it can be anything: injuries, specific workouts, kind of mindfulness stuff, and anything that you guys have that's bothering you from in the running realm. We'll try to put something together for you.
Cool. Awesome. Well, have a great weekend, everybody. Enjoy the sunshine and the spring-like weather.
Awesome. Thanks for stopping by, everybody.